This podcast is about the New York civil fraud suit against President Donald Trump. Why am I laughing? And the Fani Willis Georgia election interference case. We want to thank our sponsor, Y-Refi. More about Y-Refi later. First, the New York civil fraud case. $355 million with interest that could bring it to over $400 million. Now, former President Donald Trump has been ordered to pay more than $355 million for allegedly defrauding banks and other investors. A judge found that Trump, his company, and family members fraudulently inflated assets to get loans on more favorable conditions and then deflated the value of the very same assets to pay less in taxes. Now, it's important to remember this is a civil case brought by the New York AG who campaigned to get Trump. It was not brought by the lenders. It was not brought by the investors. They didn't complain. The lenders got their interest payments. They got their principal back. And at least one lender testified that he would do business again with Trump. $355 million. O.J. Simpson and Robert Blake killed 3 people. And in their successful wrongful death lawsuits against them, they were ordered to pay a combined $90 million. But Trump has to pay $355 million when these so-called victims did not even complain. And Trump hasn't killed anybody, at least not yet.
But a crooked New York State judge just ruled that I have to pay a fine of $355 million for having built a perfect company. Great cash, great buildings, great everything. It affects New York. It's mostly talking about New York, where we have a totally corrupt attorney general. She campaigned on the fact that I will get Trump, I will get Trump. Everybody's seen it. Letitia James, they've all seen it. Well, we'll be appealing, but more important than that, this is Russia, this is China, this is the same game. All comes out of the DOJ, it all comes out of Biden. It's a witch hunt against his political opponent, the likes of which our country has never seen before. You see it in third world countries.
So who was hurt? This is Kevin O'Leary, a New York businessman, investor, and one of the judges on Shark Tank. He was on CNN before the judge's decision.
Well, let's leave out Trump for a minute, and let's leave out politics and just talk about what happens in real estate development anywhere. So if you're a developer and you've got a building on a block anywhere in America and it's worth, let's say, $500 million, and you want to build a building right beside it, you go to the bank and say, this building is worth $500 million. I'd like to borrow a construction finance loan against this asset, and I want you to tell me it's worth $500 million too. And the bank negotiates with you and says, well, no, we think it's worth $400 million. And you fight it out. You're always trying to show your assets in the brightest light with the sunshine you could possibly determine for them. You want them to be worth the very most because you're only going to get a 40 or 50% loan to value, as it's called. Then you borrow that money. In the case of a $500 million asset, maybe you get $250 million, and you build a new building with a construction finance loan. And so that's what this case is all about. And by the way, forget about Trump. Every single real estate developer everywhere on earth does this. They always talk about their asset being worth a lot, and the bank says no. And that's just the way it is. So in this case, when I'm trying to figure out, and I'm not pro or con, or I don't care about the politics, who lost money? Nobody. The bank got paid back the construction finance loan, and a new building was built. And if you're going to sue this case and win, you got to sue every real estate developer everywhere. This is all they do. This is what they do all day long, every day. So I don't think this thing will ever survive appeal, regardless of what the fine is. This doesn't even make sense.
Trump is appealing and should win on appeal. This is ridiculous. And he's barred from doing business in New York for 3 years? Are you kidding me? The lenders were encouraged by Trump to get their own appraisal of the properties to make sure that the properties were valuable enough to loan money to Trump. So again, who is harmed here? Plus, the New York AG, Letitia James, ran promising to get Trump.
America is an uncharted territory. We are angrier and more deeply divided than we've ever been at any point in our history since the Civil War. And at the eye of the storm is Donald Trump, ripping families apart, threatening women's most basic rights, and running for Attorney General because I will never be afraid to challenge this illegitimate president.
Whoa! First of all, let's stop right there. Illegitimate president? Now who's an election denier? Obama's Homeland Security Secretary Jay Johnson testified under oath that while the Russians tried to change vote tallies, They failed to change a single one during the 2016 election to get Donald Trump elected. Not a single one.
I know of no evidence that through cyber intrusions, votes were altered or suppressed in some way.
Yet a YouGov poll found 66% of Democrats, that's what you call a supermajority, believe the Russians changed vote tallies to elect Donald Trump. And former President Jimmy Carter pushed this lie.
There's no doubt that the Russians did interfere in the election. And I think the interference, although not yet quantified, if fully investigated, would show that Trump didn't actually win the election in 2016. He lost the election, and he was put into office because the Russians interfered.
What? A former president contesting the integrity of an election? Say it ain't so. And there were many others.
How can you win with Russian interference, though?
That's a real
what I'm
thing.
scared about in 2020.
But rightly.
Because I think he's an illegitimate president that didn't really win. So how do you fight against that in 2020?
You are absolutely right.
He's an illegitimate president in my mind.
Would you be my vice presidential candidate? Folks, look, I absolutely agree.
Trump knows he's an illegitimate president.
The president-elect, although legally elected, is not legitimate.
I don't see this president-elect as a legitimate president.
But nobody calls former President Carter, Letitia James, Hillary Clinton election deniers. But let's get back to James.
From the Muslim ban.
No, it wasn't a Muslim ban. Here's what the left-wing organization factcheck.org said back in June 2018. Trump most recently issued a proclamation restricting certain nationals of Iran, Libya, Somalia, Syria, Yemen, and North Korea from obtaining visas to travel to the United States. Certain Venezuelan government officials and their families were also barred. The first 5 countries are majority Muslim nations, but that's far from banning all Muslims. In fact, in January 2017, the Pew Research Center estimated that Trump's original executive order would affect only about 12% of Muslims in the world, end of quote. So it wasn't a Muslim ban. But get this, the countries that were subject to Trump's Muslim ban were the very same countries that Congress and Barack Obama identified as requiring greater security for people from these countries. Even the Washington Post sort of admitted it. Quote, 4 countries were identified by Congress in a bill signed by Obama. And then the Obama administration added 3 more. But Obama and the Democrats in Congress wanted to require greater visa security of people who had traveled to those countries, end of quote. What? So there was sort of a Weasley disclaimer, but the bottom line is these are the same countries identified by Congress and by Obama. But when Obama does it, it's different. They continued, quote, when given a chance, the Obama administration specifically rejected the citizen-based restrictions that Trump has now ordered. I'm not even sure what that means. So while the names are the same, the approach is the polar opposite, close quote. So said Washington Post. So did Trump impose a Muslim ban against the same countries that Congress and Barack Obama determined that people coming to America from those countries warranted greater scrutiny? Did he? But let's don't call it, at least under Obama, a Muslim ban. Channeling Joe Biden. Back to Letitia James.
To efforts to deport immigrants.
Penalty flag. Obama deported more immigrants than did Trump.
Finally, for question 5, we get to detention. Which of these presidents put more than 420,000 people in detention in just one single year of his presidency? Yes, arrested and put them in jail. President Barack Obama has detained more immigrants in jails, prisons, and detention facilities than any other president of the United States of America. That's 5 for 5. And it goes to the Deporter-in-Chief, Barack Obama.
Back to Ms. James.
To denying transgender students the ability to choose whatever bathroom they want, rolling back regulations to protect our planet, colluding with foreign powers, putting profits over people, and dividing us in ways we haven't seen in generations. Corruption in Albany.
You get the point. Can you say Trump hater? Political bias? Maybe someday they will develop a vaccine for Trump derangement syndrome. This is about somebody running for AG with an express promise to get somebody, in this case, Donald Trump. No evidence taken yet, no testimony taken yet, but she'd already made up her mind during the campaign that Trump is liable and that she intended to go after him. A prosecutor is supposed to do justice, not go after somebody by name, let alone campaign and get elected to do so, promising to do so.
And when James was running for office, I wrote that I thought there were serious ethical problems with a prosecutor really trying to secure office on the pledge to nail one person. This is a trophy pledge that I'm going to bag Donald Trump, and not mentioning what he might be charged with. I'm just going to charge him with something. And that should be an embarrassment to the entire New York bar.
Here's what the American Bar Association said about prosecution function. A prosecutor should not use other improper considerations, such as a partisan or political or personal considerations in exercising prosecutorial discretion. A prosecutor should strive to eliminate implicit biases and act to mitigate any improper bias or prejudice. End of quote.
Why are you against Trump?
Because he's an evil dictator.
What do you think his most evil characteristics are?
He's a capitalist.
Okay, so are you a socialist?
I'm a communist.
Communist? Okay. Where has communism worked?
It's kind of worked in America, in a way, back in the day. No?
眠れる巨人を起こし、奮い立たせる結果を招いたも同然である。
What makes Y-Refi so different from other investments? Let's quickly break it down. Y-Refi offers a secure, collateralized portfolio with a strong fixed rate of return up to 10.25%. There is no attack on your principal. If you ever need your money back, you can get it back. You're in control. You can let your investment compound daily or take income, whatever you choose. There are absolutely no fees, and an investment in Y-Refi is an investment in America's future. Simply call 888-Y-REFI24. That's 888-Y-REFI24. And when you call, you won't get a sales pitch, just the info you need to see if Y-Refi is a better investment option for you. Or log on to investyrefi.com. That's invest, the letter Y, then REFY.com. And make sure you tell them the great Eldersky sent you. By the way, I am a co-founder of Old Glory Bank. Get a free copy of my new book, As Goes California, My Mission to Rescue the Golden State and Save a Nation. Open an account in Old Glory Bank, and when you get your debit card in the mail, activate it, and you will get a free copy of my new book, As Goes California. Just go to oldglorybank.com. That's oldglorybank.com. Now on to the Georgia case. The Fulton County prosecutor, Fani Willis, has apparently had a romantic relationship with her lead investigator. She paid him a bunch of money, and at least part of that money was apparently used for them to go on lavish vacations. The defendants in that so-called election interference case, including Donald Trump, filed a motion to have her disqualified from the case. Rather than step aside and just avoid an appearance of impropriety, she dug in her heels and said, "I'm not going to go." So there was a televised hearing on whether she should be disqualified. It was much-watched TV.
I object to you getting records. You've been intrusive into people's personal lives. You're confused. You think I'm on trial. These people are on trial for trying to steal an election in 2020. I'm not on trial, no matter how hard you try to put me on trial. Let me help you out. I lived there in 2020. He never came to my house in 2020, let alone live with me, as you put falsely in these documents. In the first 3 months of 2021, when I could still enjoy my home, Mr. Wade never came to South Fulton, and it is certainly a lie that he lived with me.
So in 2020, so you said 2019, 2020, did Mr. Wade ever visit you at a place that you resided?
He has never been to my home in South Fulton. 2020 was before I knew that a phone call was going to be made and I was going to have to abandon my home. As a result thereof, he never visited, lived at, came to, or has seen South Fulton.
You qualified that with your home in South Fulton.
That's where I lived in 2020.
2020, did he ever visit you at a place that you resided?
Okay. I don't understand. You're going to give me guidance. In 2020, I lived in South Fulton. Okay. That's the only place I lived in South Fulton. That's before I had to abandon my home, Judge.
All right.
And at my home in South Fulton, he never came there, okay? So if you don't come someplace, you can't live there.
Ms. Willis, I'm going to have to caution you. This is going to be my first time I have to caution you. We have to listen to the questions as asked. And if this happens again and again, I'm going to have no choice but to strike your testimony.
Out came the race card.
She's so tainted now. And the way she's handled it is really amazing. She's got this wonderful quote here. She said, you cannot expect black women to be perfect and save the world. We need to be allowed to stumble. We need grace. So it's just this, falling on this almost religious sort of appeal. And of course, it's a racial thing. It's not racial. If you're running an office, you shouldn't engage in a sexual kickback scheme.
I'm sorry, sir, but there are no rooms available.
Don't you think I realize what's going on here, miss? Who do you think I am, huh? Don't you think I know that if I was some hotshot from out of town that pulled inside here, and you guys made a reservation mistake, I'd be the first one to get a room, and I'd be upstairs relaxing right now. But I'm not some hotshot from out of town. I'm a small reporter from Rolling Stone magazine that's in town to do an exclusive interview with Michael Jackson that's going to be picked up by every major magazine in the country. I was going to call the article, Michael Jackson is sitting on top of the world, but now I think I might as well just call it, Michael Jackson can sit on top of the world just as long as he doesn't sit in the Beverly Palm Hotel, because there's no allowed in there.
Excuse me, sir. It seems that we do have a last-minute cancellation. There is a room available. It's a suite, but I'll only charge you the single room rate.
Thank you. I'm sorry I got upset. It's probably from jet lag or something. I'm very tired.
I understand,
What's
sir.
the rate, anyway?
That'll be $235 a night, sir.
Miss Willis, why not just recuse yourself? Why not just say, hey, this looks bad, this smells bad. The underlying case against Donald Trump, she could argue, remains valid. I cannot just lead the investigation, and my lover cannot be involved. What's so hard about that? Just recuse yourself.
I have to tell you, I've met dumb lawyers who do stupid things over my 60 years of experience. I don't think I've ever seen anybody do something as dumb as this. Here's the case of a lifetime. Every prosecutor wants to prosecute the former president, maybe the future president. And she goes and picks the one person to be her special prosecutor to get paid $650,000 of state money who she may be having an inappropriate relationship with. Obviously, this has to all come out. The appearance of justice here has been violated. This case just stinks to high heaven.
And then there's this little matter of taxpayer money. Her lover says that she reimbursed him with cash. She said she always keeps a lot of cash at her home, sometimes as much as $15K, and that it's a black thing to have that kind of cash at the house. She and her father played the race and gender card to explain why she had cash at her house.
Mr., let's go on and have the conversation.
I've just asked you whether or not it was a coincidence.
Had absolutely nothing to do with this. It's interesting that we're here about this money. Mr. Wade is used to women that, as he told me one time, the only thing a woman can do for him is make him a sandwich. We would have brutal arguments about the fact that I am your equal. I don't need anything from a man. A man is not a plan. A man is a companion. And so there was tension always in our relationship, which is why I would give him his money back. I don't need anybody to foot my bills. The only man who's ever foot my bills completely is my daddy.
Excuse me, and Your Honor, I'm not trying to be racist, okay? But it's a black thing, okay? I was trained, and most black folks, they hide cash or they keep cash, and I train. You always keep some cash.
There was an article in the New York Times about how black women feel about what they perceive to be the unfair treatment of Fani Willis. The article is called "The Case Against Fani Willis is Familiar to Black Women." It said, quote, "They feel that black women are held to a different standard and that Ms. Willis should have known that her identity, along with the enormous political stakes of the case, would create a white-hot spotlight on her personal conduct," end of quote. The discussions about race and gender continued, and Ms. Willis's dilemma had played out in group chats with text messages flying back and forth, in kitchen table discussions between couples, and at student hangouts. "We deal with the sexism as well as the racism," an attorney said, "but sometimes the sexism is a little worse." Donna Brazile, the former chair of the DNC, said, "I can't sit in judgment of her as a human being, but I can say, in terms of her role as a public prosecutor, yeah, she showed bad judgment, but she faced vitriol and racial animus as a woman of color in a position of power," end of quote. The View co-host Ana Navarro Cardenas said, "When you are a woman of color in such a high-profile position, you know that the scrutiny that's going to befall you is greater than on anyone else. And she needed to have kept her house clean," End of quote. This, by the way, explains precisely why the Dems cannot get rid of Kamala Harris, no matter how unpopular she is to everybody else other than to blacks and black females. She was picked because she's a black female. She's still a black female, and black females are the most loyal part of the Democratic base. And if Joe Biden cannot fog up a mirror, next batter up is Kamala Harris. If she is somehow drop-kicked for somebody else, especially a white dude like Governor Gavin Newsom or Mayor Pete, black female voters will be livid. Not so livid that they will vote Republican, mind you, but they just won't vote at all, thereby guaranteeing whoever our nominee is will win, and they cannot afford to do that. NBC's Joy Reid blames Kamala Harris' treatment on the media. Most of the media, she said, is still white and male, and their take on Kamala Harris becomes the take. It becomes conventional wisdom, end of quote. So the Race and Sex Identity Party has chosen Harris because of her race and her gender. They are stuck with her. They are stuck with Kamala Harris. Finally, let's remember what this election fraud case is all about. It's about Trump asking the Secretary of State of Georgia to make sure that he really lost. Were there 11,000 or more votes somewhere that somehow were not cast?
So, look, all I want to do is this. I just want to find 11,780 votes, which is one more than we have, because we won the state.
Oh, my goodness, hide the women and children. Donald Trump is trying to steal an election.
He said, hide your kids, hide your wife.
That's it. He didn't say steal 11,000 votes. He said find 11,000, as in weren't there that many that were cast, but somehow were not counted. That's it. Now, I predict the $355 million damage case in the New York fraud case against Trump won't stand, and the Georgia case against him is in serious, serious trouble. It's a long way until November this year, but the black face of white supremacy will get you through. I'm Larry Elder, and we've got a country to save.